Dave got dinner Fáilte Rashkady Chlor Ella and Shut Air An Cluiche. Hello everyone, welcome back to another show on An Cluiche with me, Seamus Brady, your host for this one. I'm joined by Jason Keelan from the Loaf of Bread podcast. We are going to have a look ahead, preview, and eventually, Jason, official predictions for who we think is going to win all four Allianz Football League Finals. So looking forward to watching this on Monday to see how wrong we were. But how are you feeling heading into this weekend and then obviously previewing these games?
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Shay. Looking forward to the four finals. Big weekend ahead. Don't know how much we'd read into the four finals. They always say, the league and the championship so different. But at the same time, it's thrown up a couple of crackers, in particular Division 2, with two of the three unbeaten sides in the country in the league left in it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the weekend. It should be good.
It certainly will be. You'd imagine, be all guns blazing, especially between Armagh and Donegal. There's never a friendly game between the two of them. There'd be no backsteps taken, no question about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go chronologically. So we're going to go from the games that are taking place and we're going to work through them. So Division 4 takes place first. We'll do that. We'll work our way all the way up like a starter, main course and dessert, right up until the Division 1 final. So we're going to start off with Division 4. And if you're watching, get involved in the comments. Let us know who you think is going to win. Let us know any questions that you have for us. Make it a fully engaging conversation. Get involved with us. So let's start with Division 4. So we have here Laois against Leitrim. Now, in all divisions, one thing that Luke said on the pod, which is really spot on about the league this year, in all four divisions, you had what you would kind of describe as that team that just looked miles ahead and way too good to be in the division that they're in. Derry were like that in Division 1 in the first four games. Donegal and Armagh were definitely that in Division 2. Down and Westmeath have been, near perfect in Division 3. And then in Division 4, Laois from the start were that team. Now, ironically, Leitrim had made some slip-ups. One of the key results that actually got them into this position in the first place was beating Laois. So it's a really interesting final heading into this one. And then on top of that, Leitrim don't get many big days in Croke Park. So this one is a big day for them. Laois, a little bit more experience with Croke Park given the Leinster Championship, but probably not many happy memories at Leinster Championships over the last 10, 20 years. But very, very interesting game, this one, because Laois on paper, if you're to look at Division 4, they should be the obvious favourites. But the only team that has beaten them is Leitrim.
Yeah, that's completely correct. Everything you said there. Laois had flying start. I know they were rusty enough from what I remember against Longford in the first game. I'd obviously a family in Longford. They try and keep up with a bit of their stuff as well. So they were a bit rusty. And then was it Wexford they beat, and then they hammered Carlow, which kind of, people might say, oh, it's just Carlow, but for Laois, that's big, to get a big result like that. They unearthed the young Roach guy, the free taker.
Killian Roach.
Killian, yeah. And then I know, obviously, my sister-in-law is involved on the Port Arlington, three kind of, titles, and not a great season by all accounts for them. So maybe Laois weren't expecting a huge amount this year, but certainly deserving of their place. I'm trying to think, there was a couple of other, there was the Dempsey guy, Evan O'Carroll, I know was, pretty good as well. But I think Killian Roach was kind of the main guy they were relying on, for frees. My sister-in-law was filling me in a little bit on him as well.
Yeah. No, that was... Yeah. He's been a real star.
Yeah, seems to be a bit of a find. And I know, everyone will argue, every county now is finding a goalkeeper who can kick frees and whatnot, but, it's part and parcel of the game now. The game's not the same as it was. It's tactically totally different. So, to find someone like him, probably no harm. Trying to remember who your man, the keeper they had last year, who was a bit mentally, who started coming out of field all the time and losing possession.
Corbett, wasn't it? Mike Corbett.
Yeah, can't remember who it was. Yes, it could be one of them, but he was a bit scary when he used to try and run out with the ball and he kept losing possession all the time. So yeah,
at least have a history of that. I mean, as far as I remember, everyone talks that Ethan Rafferty was the first one to do it. He wasn't. I distinctly remember Laois in 2018 under John Sturgrew, and Graham Brody was their keeper, and Brody used to come miles out.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
absolutely miles out. And I remember they played Dublin in the Leinster final that year, and the entire crowd had never seen a goalkeeper come that far before. Now, the game was a bit of a non-event because Dublin battered Laois and ran away with it, and it was over very quickly. Brody still persisted with that tactic of coming far out the field. And when a team does that and gets it right against Dublin, and Laois did get some joy out of it. They got overlaps. They always had a man free with Brody out the pitch because he was very comfortable with the ball. And I bet you that's where the ideas started circulating about what we ended up seeing with Rafferty, with Morgan, with Rory Beggan, like that they're comfortable coming out. And it's funny that you look at someone like Stephen Cluxton, who's just kind of like, nah. And the Dublin have never really done it. They use Cluxton as a bit of a quarterback that like they will go back to him if they need to, but he never comes out.
Yeah, it was Brody who I was thinking of. I can't believe that's all that long ago. 2018, Jesus.
Yes, 6 years ago.
Yeah, we were thinking it was like last year, the year before. Yeah, Brody's who I'm thinking of, who, was, entertaining in many ways. But I always, if I was a Laois fan, I'd always be a bit afraid when he was going with the ball. But yeah, and as you said, then when Leitrim and Laois met, and Leitrim snuck, I think, by a point, I'm trying to remember, a point or two, they won by. It probably was a little bit disheartening for Laois to lose to Leitrim. They would have felt, that they were certainly beatable. But obviously then, you have the whole Andy Moran story, and everyone has gone with it in the past few days, and controversy in the Wexford game and all that. So yeah, it's made for, a final that people are maybe taking note of, because Division 4 finals, have tended to kind of drift away into the background. Even like London getting a win in that, and bringing through like Shea Rafter and that kind of thing was great for them. So it's not the forgotten division maybe anymore, which is great. And yeah, it should be a good final.
Definitely should be. And what we're going to do now, this next part, I'm going to run through all of the games and the results, and then the top scorers. And these are 100% from the Gaelic Statsman Instagram page.
Yep.
Matthew's, both of our good friends. Jason, I'm sure you can agree with me when I say he's one of the
hero.
Best around. If you don't follow Matthew, what are you doing with yourself? Go follow Gaelic Statsman's Instagram page, one of the best around.
Yeah.
He posted the Laois results and the top scorers, and then did the same for Leitrim, did the same for Down, same for Westmeath. Fella just churns out like these stats, he's quality at it. So Laois have gone, they beat Longford 112 to 2-7 on the opening day. That was a very good result, because I remember I tipped Longford to go up with Laois, and slightly disappointed in them that they didn't. Then they beat Wexford, you're right, 119 to 12 points, hammered Carlow 214 to 9, snuck a victory against Tipperary 11 to 1-7, beat London 212 to 9 points, very comfortable victory there. The Leitrim game, they lost by a point, and it was at home, 113 to 17 points. I was shocked by that, to be honest, because I thought they were untouchable in the division. Bounced back, they hammered Waterford away from home, 519 to 9 points. They've scored in total 12 goals and 100 points. That's an average of 213 a game, and they've conceded on average 11 points a game, which amounts to 3 goals and 70 points in the entire league campaign. So on average, they're winning games by 8 points. So they've been flawless in the division, apart from the Leitrim game. The top scorers, Mark Barry has hit 221, Evan O'Carroll 219, Killian Roach, the goalkeeper, has hit 15 points, Paul Kingston 2-9, Sean Fitzpatrick 1-9, Damon Larkin 2-6, Kevin Swain 2-1, Niall Dunn 4 points, Brian Daly 4 points, Regan Murphy 1-1, Brian Byrne 3 points, Owen Lowry 3 points, Conor Heffernan 2, Simon Fingleton 1, Kieran Lillis 1, and Mark Timmins 1 point. So that's Laois. Leitrim on the other side, they started off beating Waterford 217 to 1-5, then beat London 1-8 to 6. Then they got that controversial victory over Wexford. We'll come back to that with the last minute Ryan O'Rourke penalty. They won that 3-7 to 2-9. Then they lost to Carlow 214 to 116. Then they also lost to Longford 116 to 13 points. That's when I thought their promotion campaign was, forget about it. They bounced back. They beat Laois in O'Moore Park 17 points to 113, and beat Tipperary 15 points to 9 to elevate themselves into the promotion places. They've scored an average of 113 a game, amassing to 793 in total, and conceded 772 or 110 per game. So they're winning on average by 3 points. So their average is far less than Laois's is. And their top scorers, Dara Rooney with 40 points has been immense. Ryan O'Rourke with 518 has been brilliant. Barry McNulty with 6. Riordan O'Rourke with 1-3. Paul Keeney with 4 points. Evan Sweeney with 1-1. Mark Plunkett with 3 points. Tom Pryor with 3. Shane Quinn, Aidan Flynn, Pierce Dolan, Nevin O'Donnell, all with 2. Jamie McGreal, Jack Foley, Niall Walsh, Jack Kahini, Conor Reynolds, Donald Casey, and Donald Rinn, all with 1 point each. So that's both teams' journey to the final wrapped up. And what I'm going to ask you next at this point is Leitrim, their mindset about being in Croke Park, but then also the mindset of people saying you shouldn't be here because of the penalty. That penalty shouldn't have been a penalty. What do you think their mindset is? And then Laois, on the other hand, getting a chance to redeem the only defeat they've had. Who do you think is coming into this game in a better mindset?
Probably Leitrim. They'll have the factor of the fact, obviously, Andy Moore is well able to explain how Croke Park will work. It's, as you and I know anyway, it's completely different. It's nothing like playing in your local ground. I don't think they'll be too fazed by the newspaper reports and all that, writing about the penalty. And I don't think one moment really defines the entire season. They could probably look back and, as most managers would say, it evens itself out over time, decisions for and against you. It just so happened that one was a monumental one in terms of the way the league actually panned out. But yeah, I still think Leitrim will be kind of happier in some ways. Now, whether they like the fact that they're now in the limelight, anymore and, sort of taking centre stage. For Laois, yeah, I think they'll be happy to be in the final. I know you were saying at the start you thought Longford would win, around the start. I probably could have told you that was never going to happen before the league even threw in.
I don't know, just the O'Byrne Cup and everything. I really thought, considering as well that they've been a team that have been consistently pushing for promotion out of Division 3.
Yeah.
I thought that they'd bounce straight back. I don't know what. Anyway, they're not here. We're not talking about them, but
yeah,
it's disappointed with them.
Yeah, I think they were a bit disappointed in themselves as well. But yeah, I won't say too much about them because but I know bits and pieces, I suppose, that maybe aren't going as well as they might have expected or that they were hoping for. So it wasn't a massive shock to me to see that they didn't end up in the final at all. It was no surprise that Laois ended up in the final, although the Laois of 20 years ago this year and all that, is certainly dead and buried. It's a completely different setup altogether. But at the same time, you still have the sort of lineage of names. You still see Kingston's coming through like you did 20 years ago as well. So I still think Leitrim will be slightly happier coming in. They've probably never ever been since maybe 92 or whatever when they won Connacht, maybe the last time that they were in the paper so much for GA reasons. So depends how they react to it. But I wouldn't mind being in the Leitrim camp now going into the weekend. You're going in really as nothing to lose. Laois are going to win because they're Laois and they've been here before and bigger county in inverted commas. I wouldn't mind being in the Leitrim camp.
Well, they certainly have nothing to lose. I think if Laois, there's something about it for Laois which makes me think that if they don't win the league final, it kind of takes a gloss off their entire league campaign. That if they win this game, they go up as Division 4 champions. It's like, oh well, they beat the team that the only team that beat them. They've righted that wrong, and that's their record, pretty much flawless down in Division 4. But if they lose twice to Leitrim, I think it really damages anybody's kind of expectations for a potential Tailteann Cup campaign or how they might get on in Leinster, everything like that. I think it does derail it a lot if Leitrim had their number, not once, but twice. And one of those was in O'Moore Park. So, that's something that I think will be playing on their minds. So now, with all that being said, official prediction time. Division 4, final, Laois or Leitrim? What are you thinking for this one?
Do I have to go first?
I can go first if you want.
No, go on. I'll nail my colours to the mast. I'm going to go Leitrim, just for the Andy Moore effect. I think it could just he'll G this up as if it was like the All Ireland final for them. Now it's saying that obviously, as you said, Laois, it would be bad if they don't win it, and they wouldn't it wouldn't do their season any favours at all. Like what this could do for Leitrim though would be immeasurable in many ways. So yeah, I'm going to go Leitrim. I'm going to say Leitrim for the crack. I'll have Aaron now coming back and replaying this.
As if anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, Aaron, a good friend, put out myself and Matthew were on his end of year show. What he did was he highlighted to me and to Matthew our worst picks of the entire season, and that was a really, really funny part of the show, to be honest. But yeah, personally, I'm going to go with Laois. I think that if they're favourites in a game, which they were favourites in a game in O'Moore Park, I think it's very rare that the underdogs win twice. In sport across the board, I think it's not uncommon for the underdogs to catch the favourites once, but to catch them twice, I don't think so. I think if Leitrim hadn't beaten Laois in O'Moore Park, I think there'd be more chance that they could catch them in the final. But I think Laois should be well aware to what the threats are now. I think Ryan O'Rourke is going to get very closely monitored in this game. Like players like Dara Rooney, like they know what they're dealing with now to the maximum. I just feel they have more experience in Croke Park slightly. I am going to go with the favourite. It's a boring choice, but like gun to my head, I think that's what I will go with. If you're saying like put my life on it, Laois, put a bet on it, maybe Leitrim. But I'll go with Laois to take this one.
I have a soft spot for Emlyn Mulligan because he sent me a Leitrim jersey last week. So.
There you go. I've never had the pleasure of meeting Emlyn Mulligan, but he genuinely was one of my favourite footballers growing up because of the way he played the game. He was like one of those fellas that always hit the ball outside of the boot and just such a nice footballer to watch. And it seems like a lovely bloke as well, hence why he sent you the jersey. Now, you've got a bit of skin in this game. Division 3's final, down against Westmeath. Very, very interesting game, this one. Down in Westmeath, when I was talking about those teams, down in Westmeath were looked on a one-way ticket out of the division from the get-go. Both stumbled at stages, and actually both of them remarkably looked like they both could slip out of the promotion places at the end. If Clare had a beaten down, they actually would have leapfrogged down into the promotion places. We have to say to Clare, a massive shout out to them because of how hard they were hitting the off-season, yet how they still pulled it back. Down in Westmeath are in the final against each other. It was a draw when they played against each other in the normal league season, so it's teed up to be a cracker of a final, this one.
Yeah, I wrote an article there for the paper last week, or I may have written it the week before, I can't remember, but it was basically just kind of looking back on Westmeath's campaign, and when I look back on it, it was called, the point that saved the season. So like we've been the perennial kind of yo-yo team in the National League, constantly up and down all the time. We very rarely stand still, but we've struggled. Last year was a big struggle to get out of Division 3. It didn't go well, particularly against the teams up in Ulster. Like there were a couple of times we were ahead and we absolutely chucked it away. And then there were a couple of times where we just put ourselves so far behind that we just couldn't get back into it. Fermanagh was probably the worst of the worst now, to be fair. But then this season, it started off, it's been pretty good, to be fair, all along, and particularly without Hess. John Hesson only made his first appearance there, against Sligo in the defeat. The Clare game is the one that stands out to me in Cusack Park because it was a bizarre game of football. The wind was howling, and Clare kicked 10 points in the first half, and 8 of them, I'm pretty sure, were from well outside the 45, and the lads were basically chipping them from the 45 over, and Westmeath just couldn't cope with it. And then the second half, it was the complete opposite. Minute from the end, we were 5 points down. We had clawed it back through Ronan Wallace, Sam McCartan got a couple, Ronan O'Toole, and then we went ahead. And then 2 minutes into injury time, they levelled. They had the disallowed goal, which caused controversy, but it was disallowed, just not for the reasons that everyone was saying. And then Ronan O'Toole popped up 7 minutes into injury time, kicked a whirly, and we won the game by a point. Had that not gone over, things might have been completely different mentally and otherwise for Westmeath. We're not always great at bouncing back from, bad moments. So that would have been a real kick in the teeth. On the plus side,
and what was the story with that disallowed goal? Like, if it wasn't a square ball, what? Just so I know for future.
So the disallowed goal, and it was it was one, some of the county board people actually pointed it out to me after, because I was, at the time, all I saw was the ball going into the net, hands on head going, please be a square ball. When the referee went in, I said, there's a chance it's going to be a square ball. The goal was disallowed. The referee apparently had spotted a push by, I can't remember who the goal scorer was, it spotted a push just before the goal. The ball was actually played across the square. So the goal scorer had pushed a Westmeath player apparently going in towards the square, and that's what the free was actually given for. But in the chaos of the ball going into the net and the Clare crowd were cheering away, there was no kind of time almost for the referee between the foul and the goal to actually stop the play. And that's what he went in for.
If that's American football there, he's grabbing a mic and letting everybody know why he gave the free out.
Yeah. Whereas nobody knew.
And that's a case again of media coverage that, say, in the lower divisions, you don't really have comprehensive coverage. You get kind of one line that comes out. This is what happened. And there doesn't really seem to be much alternate stories.
No. And Desi Dolan thought it was a square ball. Like, I interviewed him after for the papers. And RTE were in there interviewing him as well. And like, we just said, about the disallowed goal. And he said, well, if it's a square ball, it's a square ball. That's just what the referee saw. But it turned out there was nothing to do with a square ball. It wasn't actually a square ball. If the referee hadn't spotted the foul, that goal would have been legitimate because he wasn't in the square before the ball put in. So it was probably, as I was chatting to a couple of Clare lads, they were like, if that's what it's given for, they said, how many times that happened on the pitch, and that would never be given as a free. Like, it wouldn't even be considered a free. So we got out of jail with that one, really. And like, it did turn things slightly in our favour, particularly when Ronan went up and kicked the winning point, and just to rub salt into the wounds for Clare. So, but it has saved our season in many ways, because I think another season in Division 3 next year, regardless of how good Desi might have been in the championship and how close we were last year with Hess's kick against Tyrone going wide, the league matters a good bit to us down here. Particularly given the fact that, at some stage Dublin are likely to maul us somewhere along the line. So we try and, put a bit of emphasis and bring lads through in the league, as much as we can. And Senan Baker's been one. Charlie Drum, was very good before he had a bit of an injury. So it's big for us to be in this final. It's big to be back in Croke Park. It'll stand to us, even if Down were to beat us. Down really should have beaten us in the actual league game. We're very fortunate to get away. So, I'd like to think that we'd put up a good fight against them. If we lost, it probably wouldn't surprise me too much. But at the same time, we've probably got as good a chance of beating them, I would say, as anybody. So,
well, it's the only team. You're the only team that have been able to hold them. Like, Down have absolutely crushed everybody else. Like, not even comfortably, when they've looked on a different level to everybody that they played against. So what we'll do now, again, same thing. I'll run through everything. Again, big shout out to Matthew. These are his stats. Go follow Gaelic Statsman if you don't. So the Down journey to the final. They beat Wicklow 18 points to 13. Then they beat Limerick 3-16 to 9. They beat Antrim 115 to 1-6. They beat Offaly 4-12 to 2-14. They beat Sligo 2-17 to 1-8. So up until the Westmeath game, they'd not only been beating teams, but beating them out the gate with big scores. Westmeath, they drew at them 110 to 13 points, and then they beat Clare on the final day 315 to 110. So apart from the Westmeath game, they've hammered everybody else. They've scored 14 goals and 103 points. It's an average of 215 per game, and they've conceded 573, an average of 110 per game. So they've won on average by 8 points in every game that they played in. So they've been a level apart from everybody else. Westmeath, on the other hand, they started off beating Offaly 111 to 10. Then they beat Clare in that game 111 to 13 points with the last minute goal being disallowed. Then they beat Wicklow 113 to 10. They beat Limerick 14 points to 1-8, beat Antrim 13 points to 9, drew it down 13 points to 110, and then lost on the final day to Sligo 114 to 11 points. They've scored 386, an average of 14 points a game, and conceded 374, an average of 12 points a game. The three top scorers for Down, the ones to watch: Pat Haven, Oran Murdoch, and Liam Kerr. No question about it. Caleb Doherty, Daniel Guinness, and Danny McGill are also worth watching there. Westmeath's top scorers: Senan Baker, Ronan O'Toole, and Luke Loughlin. Other ones worth keeping an eye on: Kieran Martin with 1-7, and Sam McCartan 6 points. Ronan Wallace with 5. Ray Canellan with 4. John Heslin has only hit 2 points, one from a free so far in the league. So Westmead's reliance on him not as prevalent in this league campaign as it has been in previous years. So the main thing that you're noticing there is like Westmead and their average winning margin is far less than Down's. Their average winning margin is 2 points. Down's average winning margin is 8 points. So Westmead have kind of managed games and they've won them. But Down seem to have blown teams away. We have a comment in here from Kieran McBreen. He says, could we see 4 one-sided finals this weekend, lads, with Dublin, Armagh, Down and Laois all winning comfortably in the end? I wouldn't know now. That the one that I would immediately point at and go, I'm not sure about that one, is Armagh Donegal.
And Down and Westmead.
Down and Westmead, of course. I'm not just saying that because you're here. Dublin and Derry will be very close as well. Laois and Leitrim won't be easy either. But Laois, I think, definitely had the more experience in Croke Park. But it'd be really, really interesting. I think there's an argument to say that, say, in the Laois-Leitrim game, Leitrim will either win or Laois will win comfortably. Down Westmead here, what we're looking at with Down is, I think you're very similar situation to the Tailteann Cup last year. That if Down get the sniff of blood that they can get you, like they got with Laois, they will absolutely put the foot on the neck. Like they will absolutely go for the throat. But if you can hold them, I think all of a sudden the scoring power dries up, like we saw in the Tailteann Cup final against Meath. It's like having a boxer, say, that is almost a one-trick pony, but it works on everybody. But then when they find someone that it doesn't work on, it can unravel quite quickly. Down have so many flair players, quick players, fast players, very, very skillful footballers. But if they run into a defensive system that knows what they're doing, it kind of dries up a bit. It dried up against Meath for sure. And it dried up against Westmead as well. They only hit 110 in that game. They usually hit far higher.
Yeah, the same with the Westmead system. It has been a thing, and it's been blindly obvious for anyone going to all the Westmead games that it's been a thing for Desi Dolan to get that defensive structure in place when we turn over the ball and we're in defensive mode. It's very much 2 lines of 3. And then Andy McCormick usually kind of just sitting in front of that, who's been phenomenal. I have to mention him, and he's been superb. I would know his brother David Variola played for Westmead for a good while, playing out in Thailand now. He's been brilliant. And then obviously Ray Canellan, kind of finishes that sort of midfield area. But I do think we get underestimated a little bit. We may not be all household names for everyone around the country, but certainly I think it's the strongest Westmead panel that's been put together in a long time. Because some of the forwards we have are absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, as Matt's stats back up there, we don't, overdo it in terms of scoring compared to Down and Pat Havern, who just seems to find space regardless of, he, as you said, he could turn you in a phone box, sometimes. So we're a little bit different. We're not that kind of team. We're not that, bulldozing team that maybe we were back in 2004 against Laois, in Croke Park, that kind of thing. But we're settled and it's a little bit content. And yes, Sligo was pathetic last weekend. That was woeful. But it's not the end of the world. It's maybe showing that we've stuff to work on, and we're certainly not perfect by any means. So yeah, I'm just looking at Kieran's, comment there, 4 one-sided finals and Down winning handy. I don't think they will, even on the big pitch in Croke Park. I don't think they're not just the 2010 Down team, we're not.
I do agree with you though on the.
Yeah.
I agree with you on the flair side of things. That I think when I look at that Westmead team, especially under Jack Cooney at the end when they won the Tailteann Cup and then into Desi Dolan's first year, the first word I think when I think of Westmead is I'm like, solid.
Yeah,
they're a good team.
Yep.
It's weird because I me, big MMA fan, stupid analogy incoming, right? But I'm saying that I feel like Down is like a striker and Westmead is like a really good wrestler.
Okay.
That Down are flashy, load of knockouts. Westmead might just be the kind of the kryptonite to that. They might just have the defensive system to stop them, and then they'll be used to churning out victories. Like Westmeath went toe to toe with the best teams in the country last year and did well against them. So there's no question Westmeath have more recent experience with better teams than Down do. So Westmeath will be used to going toe to toe with teams where they need to, park the bus a little bit, hold in the game, eke out scores. Ronan O'Toole, John Heslin, these guys doing the business down at the other end. It could be set up for Westmeath to win this. So I'm going to ask you now, will they? Official prediction, Down or Westmeath?
Yeah, I think I'd be confident enough. I think we'll do it. Yeah, I'd fancy our chances. Like I just look at our attacking line, and it's probably the first time in a good few years that you kind of get excited by the fact that Westmeath have, certainly from a Westmeath point of view, have probably the best attackers on the pitch, because that hasn't always been the case here, unfortunately, between politics and selection, all that kind of rubbish. But I think the best panel of attackers that we could assemble is there, probably for the first time in a long time. Like even some of the under-20s came through. Like Danny McCartan is a superb footballer. Was very unfortunate to only last 4 or 5 minutes and won the games, but superb footballer. Senan Baker, Luke Loughlin, John Heslin, Ronan O'Toole. Like
it's as good a Westmeath panel as I've seen since, ironically, when Desi was playing.
Yeah, that would be fair. Yeah, and like Robbie Ford has been there a while, like, and he's pulled out these two cameos off the bench. Like the sideline he kicked against Down, like as they're saying online, if David Clifford did it, like you'd be talking about it for weeks. Outrageous kind of stuff. And then we've still got Kieran Martin, old reliable, still coming off the bench, doing what he does. They don't call him the bear for nothing. Like he literally will bulldoze his way through if we need to. And we've that option as well if things are not going great. And he did it against Cavan, did it against Meath in 2015. No reason he can't do it again if we need to. So yeah, I'm going to go for us. I'm going to say Westmeath.
Yeah, no, I do understand that. My gut.
You're going to pick Down.
My gut is saying Down, man. I'm sorry. Feel free to pick Derry. I feel like Down have a point to prove in Croke Park, especially after the Tailteann Cup final. And they would have lost it. That would have stung a lot. And I think that they have a sniff off them that they really mean business this year. That being said, Meath beat them in Parnell Park. Down had them in the Tailteann Cup final. They didn't put right that wrong. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. And actually, I find this kind of the most difficult one to call. I'm not even joking. I already know who I'm picking for the Division 2 final and Division 1 final. This one, to me, is the most difficult. I can see very clear paths to victory for both teams. I think if Down win, I think they'll score 3 goals and it will be a flair-based victory. I think if Westmeath win, Westmeath will just hold them. And I think it will be like a 16 points to 14 victory. There was something actually interesting just before we move on from it. I remember reading about the teams not being sure just how important this game actually is. One of the Down selectors was kind of speaking about that to the press. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, with regards to how impactful this game could be for the championship, it is a bit ridiculous that they don't actually know how important this game is going into it.
I think it should be treated with, huge importance, regardless of how you look at it. Sorry, my door is creaking here. I think we're coming in with the charger for the laptop here, so he's having some issues breaking down the door. Seriously, breaking down the door. There we go. He managed to get in. It's a vital game. Regardless, like it will impact us going into the championship. It'll impact Down going into the championship. What's the actual? Do you know the actual sort of permutations? Is it going to affect?
I think it could affect who goes into the Tailteann Cup and who goes into the Sam Maguire.
Okay, I hadn't realised there was such importance on it. I thought that it was.
No, I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest. I was kind of hoping that you would know as well, being in that camp. I read it just on the way home from work today. Just read an article about it, one of the Down selectors talking about it. So I wouldn't be confident enough to speak on it. But certainly if there's any sort of uncertainty about how important the game is. I think that isn't
And go out and
great.
win
I
it.
think to be safe, I think they'd just rather
Yeah,
go into it wanting to win, just in case it's
yeah.
valuable. Because on top of that, it's a national trophy. You know, you're going to
Mm,
get the opportunity to win a national trophy in Croke Park. Not many teams get that opportunity. Two teams
mm,
now that have been flawless as well, unbeaten, the
yeah.
Division 2 final. So we'll move on to this one. Donegal against Armagh. So now we're on to Sunday's games. Donegal and Armagh will open the show on Sunday. This is a really fierce Ulster rivalry between these two counties. We've had two completely different stories. We've had Jim McGuinness returning as Donegal boss. You know, he's slotted seamlessly back into what is now a very confident Donegal team. Armagh under Kieran McGeeney have got it right. They're going back up to Division 1. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about would McGeeney stay on, especially with people like Oisin McConville, Tony McEntee sniffing around. McGeeney was kept with. So far, it's paying dividends. Donegal and Armagh both unbeaten. They drew with each other. What are you thinking going into this final? This would be fairly tight.
Yeah. I trying to remember offhand. Donegal in their first couple of games anyway that I remember had like so many scorers. I think that was the thing that I remember from a few weeks back. Was it Cork in the first game, or I don't want to bring up bad memories from that, but I think it was Cork or one of the games where they
Cork,
had like 11 or 12 different scorers, like, which is for
yeah.
an opening day in a league campaign is quite impressive. Like, I don't think we've had. I think the most we had in a game was 10.
But the one thing, man, you're right. The one thing that absolutely stood to me that day was I remember watching Donegal and being like, they are confident.
Yeah.
Like some of the scores that they were kicking, Ryan McHugh kicked a beauty, Oran Doherty kicked an outside of the left boot. And it was like McGuinness had just filled them with all that confidence that they didn't have last year.
And it does help that when you've a spade of scores like that McBrearty isn't, everything's not pinned on his shoulders. Like maybe there was too much. It's kind of like us with Heslin for a while. There's too much reliance on him. All the media gets put on him, then he kicks it wide, and it's suddenly like, oh my God, he's falling apart. Donegal are falling apart. So having a variety of scores takes a little bit off him and just lets him, do what he does best, And he was, I think, he had a goal against Cork as well. I'm trying to remember, but I just remember the scorer's been a big thing. And then when they beat Fermanagh possibly as well, they won very easily. They had quite a lot of scores as well, and that's a thing you need. Because then in a weird kind of way, the media can't get at you because they can't say, oh well, McBrearty's are injured, so that's it, they're screwed now, because they'll just conveyor belt in somebody else. And it's, as much as I'm not a Donegal fan at all, I have a very strange dislike for Donegal football, but I do have a soft spot for Jim McGuinness, and I don't know why. I shouldn't have any, because he destroyed my love of GA back in that 8-6 game years ago when everyone.
I was there. I was in the stadium.
Yeah. Oh, that drove me insane. Been at that game, and I went, I hate this guy. I hate Donegal. I think that's what started it. But I've for some reason since then got an awful fondness for him, and I like what he did and went out with Celtic and kept his his own personal kind of professional development, for want of a better word, going, and has now come back to utilize it. And he's bringing a huge amount of experience from other sports that can only be invaluable, working at the States and stuff as well.
I have a slight little rebuttal to that.
Go on, yeah.
I'm going to be honest. If I was a Donegal fan, I'd be more thinking, why did you wait so long to come back?
Yeah, you could argue that as well.
2017, 2018, 2019, I think Donegal won back-to-back Ulster championships in those 2018, 2019. They won back-to-back Ulsters. And they looked like real All-Ireland contenders. And Declan Bonner was manager. Now, Declan Bonner is a great coach, but he's not as good as McGuinness. No. And this was a Donegal team with a peak Michael Murphy, Ryan McHugh, Michael Langan, Patrick McBrearty, Owen Bon Gallagher, Padder Mogan. It was a good enough Donegal team to win an All-Ireland.
Maybe he wants to come back in, though, and take this new one.
He's come back and Murphy's gone. On paper, it's not as good a Donegal team as it was 7 years ago.
Maybe that makes it all the more phenomenal then when he does turn around and win the All-Ireland.
Maybe.
And he beats Mickey Hart along the way, just to add some extra, spice to it all. So, yeah, look, I get what you're saying, it's hard to know when you can't read into his mindset. But I don't know. I think maybe he's come back at the perfect Jim McGuinness moment, like what he took with Donegal, back in the early, whatever, 2011, 12, around that time. It wasn't the perfect article either, and he made it into something hateful but effective. Hateful, certainly a strong hateful. But it's not the same. He's come back with different ways of doing things. He's got different players. He's got different backroom staff. He's got a bit of everything different. And maybe it's made for him to just slip under the radar for a little while. Let Mickey Hart take all the the stories up in Derry and the Dublin's resurgence and the fact they're going to murder everybody along the way, and just let him sneak away in the background and see where Donegal end up, because they'll end up probably further than people will give them credit for now.
You're right. I was saying there's nobody that was happier when Mickey Hart got announced as Derry boss than Jim McGuinness.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah, and it's completely true. And I remember I said at the time that Mickey Hart's either going to go one way or the other. It's going to be Derry are going to play fantastic football still, or he'll turn them into this dinosaur defensive team. And so far, it's kind of looking like they're a bit more interesting than maybe some people thought they might be. But certainly, Armagh Donegal, I think, is the game of the weekend. Two of the three unbeaten sides, two defensively pretty solid sides, attacking wise, flying going forward. If we got the game that we all would love, it should be a high scoring, tense affair. Hopefully, neither of them revert back to old systems of yesteryear and turn into a 6-5 or an 8-6 again. But I don't think that'll happen. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think, look, if you look at Armagh, for example, like Armagh always make it entertaining. Armagh never do anything straightforward. They either rise their game to meet somebody or they drop their game to make it difficult against a team that they should beat. Donegal, I've been just amazed at how Jim has come back in and all of a sudden, overnight, a team that looked absolutely beaten to death last year, looked like they couldn't even get up for any game, was all of a sudden brimming with confidence. And that's just what Jim seems to bring to the teams. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read out their results. So Donegal started off beating Cork at home, then they beat Cavan away, then they beat Fermanagh at home, drew away to Armagh, then finished the league off by beating Louth and also by beating Meath. Then Armagh beat Louth at home, beat Meath at home, beat Kildare away, drew at Donegal, and then Fermanagh and Cork, they beat them as well. So, it's been more or less similar trajectory. Armagh have had the one slip up against Cork, where they were very, very lucky to get out of that game. Obviously, Armagh beat Cavan. That was the most impressive victory of the league campaign, as far as I'm concerned, because that game Cavan could have actually jumped Armagh, and Armagh annihilated them and made sure that was not on the cards whatsoever. Duck, this game we have two cracking teams, and the one thing for Armagh on their side is Oisín Connaughton, Keane McConville. These have been the guys that have been leading the way. It hasn't been Rian O'Neill. It hasn't been, the old reliables that they've been relying on for the last 5 years. It's been new blood has come in. Oisín Connaughton's been magnificent. Rory Grugan has also been really, really good. Then on top of that, we'll look at Donegal. Their confidence has just been brimming. They got two nasty injuries. Last weekend, McGuinness was speaking about it. McBrearty obviously picked up a knock. Going into this game, Donegal, Armagh, prediction time. What are we thinking? Division 2 final. As you said, game of the weekend. I think it's the second most difficult one to call after Down Westmeath. Donegal, Armagh in Croker. What are we thinking?
I'm thinking if Jim McGuinness wants to sort of prove himself a little bit, I think he'll try and get a better grip on the Armagh forwards, because this is one of the few games that I remember kind of reading back a little bit about. And if I remember right, almost or all of Armagh's scores were from play, whereas, now Matt will probably correct me in this, but perhaps I think it was about half or less than half of Donegal's were from play. So I think Jim will try and shore up the defence a little bit better to stop that, raft of Armagh talent that's up there. You pronounce them as Connaty, do you? Oisin Connaty. See, Westmeath is full of Connatys here, so I have to
Connachtys,
call him Oisin Connaty. So I'm going to go with Armagh. As much as I am a Jim McGuinness fan, not a Donegal fan, I'm also not an Armagh fan in the slightest. But in terms of football, two big teams, I think Armagh have enough to, in recent times, having been in Croke Park and in, devastating losses and penalties, that kind of thing, I think Armagh will want the silverware as much as Donegal, and I think they'll take it.
Yeah. Do you know what? We're not on the same wavelength at all. I'm going with Donegal. I'm not even joking. I had my picks kind of set. The Down Westmeath one,
I had
the
mine
Down
picked as well.
Westmeath one, I wouldn't. Yeah, but before that, like I knew I was going to pick Donegal. I just think if we look at Donegal, McGuinness has come back in. He's made them stick their chests out again. I feel like he won't pass up the opportunity to cap off his return with a league trophy. McGeaney, it's massive for him as well because he's won nothing with Armagh. He's won the Division 3 title, but like the Division 3 title is a little bit like, what are Armagh even doing in Division 3 in the first place?
Yeah.
So he wasn't never really going to get any credit for that one. That was like you checked the box, you got out. That's like when Derry were in Division 4 and they won the Division 4 title. It's like, no, you should never have been down there in the first place. So he wouldn't get necessarily any credit for that. The Division 2 trophy is a lot more respectable for Armagh to win.
Yeah.
And I think he really, really needs that. He really needs a trophy to kind of justify people picking him. But I'm still going to go Donegal. Narrowly. Donegal by 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I think so, yeah.
We have a question here from Caroline Dunn. She says, quick question, did Cork do well? That's actually interesting. And Cork in the league now, I think they started off terribly. They did the defeat to Donegal, and then they had a couple more defeats. And up until the Fermanagh game, they were still winless. And I know for a fact Matthew was nervous about potential relegation.
Yeah.
Cork were looking over their shoulder. But we were saying this, Cork were showing fight in their games. Kildare weren't, for example.
Yeah.
And you could see that, look, Cork are trying, they're missing chances, they're making bad mistakes, but they're giving it their all. And if you're giving it your all, you might get a bit of luck. And they got that bit of luck against Fermanagh with the Shanley goal right at the death, which saved them. And since then, they've been very good. Since then, they've picked up some notable wins. And then they, should have beaten Armagh on the final day. Armagh were very lucky to get out of there with a draw. So, yeah, what do you think, Cork?
I think it's probably not a great campaign for them. I do get the whole thing, that they're fighting in games, and they did get 3 wins, I think, out of 7. But I think, and I don't know what Matt will think on this, but the concession of quite a lot of goals, if I remember, in games, particularly early on, and a big score against Donegal in the 20-odd points or 20-something points Donegal kicked. Like, that's not really acceptable for Cork in my eyes, and I don't think they would find that acceptable either to be,
first round of the league, though. I think it's the fact that they finished well. First round, like if you look at Dublin lost to Monaghan and have finished the league. Round 7, that Monaghan game wouldn't have happened. You can't change them on that. Round 7, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
the way they're playing now, if they're to rematch in Croke Park, Dublin win.
As far as it's probably fair. It's
on a high where you can be like, okay, we can work with. If it had gone the other way around, that they started with those results and finished with the ones, I think it'd be very negative.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They've probably, I haven't looked at that way, I suppose. Yeah, that is fair that they've probably built from bad start to finish well. And maybe then you could probably say that it's probably the worst time for them to end the league. A bit like, a team never wants a halftime whistle to come sometimes. It's probably the same for them. So I just, I was thinking more about the, huge numbers that they conceded at times. I'm fairly sure they probably finished on a minus difference in points scoring as well, which is probably not great for them. But it won't matter too much because Kildare are going to take the headlines for all the wrong reasons in that division outside of the top 2, which is certainly justified.
They're the only team, I think, along with Limerick and Kildare are the only 2 to lose 7 out of 7, which is just...
Oh, they deserve it. Kildare deserve it for their attitude, really. Like, to bring in to bring in Glenn Ryan and Johnny Doyle and all these guys on big money, when they had other options, more probably equally as dedicated for nothing, basically essentially for nothing, and more proven as well, and they ignored them. That to me is bad form, and I've no sympathy for them really. It's disappointing. I do like Kildare football. A lot of my a lot of my mates obviously working, in Chapel is it near not far from the border with Kildare, like, and working with a lot of Kildare people. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. I know that's not nothing to do with the final, but it's just I found it hard to sympathize with them at all. I was just like, and then Glenn Ryan just digging holes for himself with like local media. It doesn't help. Um, Look, they're in Division 3 next year. They can take our spot and let them see what it's like down there.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's something that's on. It's something either between the current group of players and the manager that's just not clicking. Because if you look at it, they have the underage development structures. They've been winning all Ireland under 20s, over the last 5 years. They won 2 in 2023 and 2018, and then they made the final in 22. They have fantastic footballers like Daniel Flynn, Kevin Feely, Kevin Flynn. Like, they're as good as it gets, and just doesn't click. I don't really understand why, but it hasn't been clicking. Caroline here says, thanks. No problem at all, Caroline. Thank you so much for your question. Thank you for getting involved. Denise here has a couple of comments in. Hello again. Haven't managed to join one of your live pods in a good while. Well, it's good to have you back, Denise. And she says, saying that, I do think Monaghan did play very well against Dublin. Oh, Monaghan were fantastic that night. Absolutely brilliant. Stephen O'Hanlon put in one of the performances of the league that night. He was absolutely extraordinary. And that was one of the craziest moments, was I saw Stephen O'Hanlon look at Jack McCaffrey and go like, yeah, I'll have you. I'd never seen anybody ever do that to Jack McCaffrey. But yeah, that night I saw lightning strike. We'll move on to the Division 1 final then. So this is the last game of the weekend. This takes place on the Sunday. This is the one that's going to grab all the headlines because it's the Division 1 final. It's between Derry and Dublin. Derry have won 6 out of 7. The only team to beat them was Dublin, and that was in Celtic Park. Dublin put in a great performance. Dublin were not great in the opening 2 rounds, but then dramatically turned it around from round 3 onwards and have been playing scintillating football ever since. Remarkably, it's the exact same pairing that were in the Division 2 final that have gone up, and now we're in the Division 1 final. That has to be the first time that has ever happened. But we're witnessing history. Derry Dublin Act 2. Now up in Division 1. What do you think for this one?
Yeah, I'd be interested enough that has happened. Conor McKenna is a great man. I don't know if you follow him. Conor lives down the road here. Brilliant for finding out that kind of thing. Matt now will probably be able to take that one out as well. But yeah, it's bizarre that it's a Division 2 final now. It's a Division 1 final. It's no surprise, really. Dublin are phenomenal. Bad start and all that, fair enough. Monaghan, as Denise said, did play very well against them that day. Rusty start for Dublin, but mother of God, like, how good were they against Tyrone the other day? Like, that was, and that Scully goal, I think it was, that was frightening. Like, that was just so.
That reminded me of 2019 Dublin against Mayo.
Yeah.
That was like that. They can just take the handbrake off and bang.
And it
like
was
that, you're 3 points behind, and then within 10 minutes you're 12 points behind. And you're like, what the just happened?
It's pure. It's probably not something that you can earn overnight. It's that confidence to know that it doesn't matter if we fall 10 behind, we're still going to win this game. It doesn't matter if we're 10 ahead, we're going to win this game by 30. Like, it's just, I'd love to have that in my own county here, that if we had that, belief and all that. They were so good to watch against Tyrone. And Tyrone are not a bad side. Like, I know people that keep saying, oh, they're missing
Kerry as well, man.
Yeah.
First half against Kerry, we scored 2-9 from 12 shots.
Yeah. Outrageous. Like, it's the shot selection as well.
Literally missed one chance.
Yeah.
Like, that is absolutely terrifying. We have a new comment in here from Caroline Dunn. She says, I say Dublin will win by 3 points. It's a good prediction. I'm going to nail my colours to the mast. I do think Dublin will win. We'll debate and, keep debating further. But a little spoiler, I am going with Dublin. I'll explain why as we go further into it. But you're right. Like, we'll go into team by team. We'll start off with Dublin, seeing as we've been talking about them. For me, it's like we've just taken the muzzle off. And we're just like I'll be honest, watching Dublin in 2021 was like watching paint dry. It was genuinely like we fell in love with this idea of controlling the match. Oh, we're going to hand pass it, 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 and then take a shot from a percentage position.
Slow it down.
Yeah. Take a shot from a percentage position. Oh, the hand up like this. Yeah, absolutely. Take a shot from a percentage position.
Yeah.
And it was just boring to watch. It was just like, this is not entertaining. This is just like, it's like watching, again, another UFC reference, but it's like watching a wrestler just hold someone down on the ground and win by decision. It's not something that you can want to pay in to watch. It was like anytime anyone scored against Dublin as well, it was like Dublin were like, oh, that's cute. We're going to take the ball now and we're not going to give it back to you for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
This year, it's like we're playing to entertain a bit more as well, which I really love to see. I really love to see Desi take the muzzle off Con O'Callaghan, take the muzzle off Pascal and go, I want you to attack. I want you to be the brilliant forward that we all know that you can be. And when you see Con sticking 3-4 away against Kerry, it's like, he just reminded us just how good he actually is. Last year, he was a lot more of a ball carrier. He was moving a lot more with the ball and laying it off to the likes of Pascal, Costello, Mannion. This year, he's the Rolls Royce up front. He's the guy who's finishing stuff off, and he looks unbelievable, as good as I've ever seen him look this year. And that like, to round up on that point, it's just what I like to see. We're being brave, we're being aggressive, and we're being entertaining. And 2019 Dublin was the best Dublin I've watched, along with 2014 Dublin. Actually, I know Donegal beat us. 2013, 2014 Dublin, and 2019. Those are the best years where I've watched Dublin, because we played to entertain.
Do you think the players were getting bored? Is that why it's changed so radically?
Well, you look at McCaffrey. Like, McCaffrey openly said he walked away because he kind of
lost the love of the game.
Lost the love of it, yeah. And I mean, if you look at McCaffrey. McCaffrey is someone who plays with a smile on his face, who plays the way Jack McCaffrey plays is box office.
Yeah,
the pace, the speed, the skill, and the pure bravery that he has of, like, he's going to put the head down and go at you. And the way we were playing wasn't really allowing it.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. Like, it was just interesting. I just thought I'd ask, as you, from the Dublin point of view, your own point of view, like, were they getting bored? Because you got the sense that the world was getting bored anyway of watching it. And the reason I did the Kieran Kilkenny fist up thing is because I said if I saw him do that again, I was turning off the telly, like, because it's just like, you don't see it in many sports, like, and it's meant to be the one of the most free flowing games in the world, and no more than you do. Like, I spend majority of my life on a podcast trying to promote the game around the world, and yet you come back to watch, one of the top players in the country and one of the best players ever putting his fist up, to slow play down for. And I can't remember what game it was. I'm trying to rattle my head where Dublin held on to the ball. I think they showed on the Sunday game where they played it in fast forward, where Dublin held on to the ball like for 3 minutes and 50 or something ridiculous. Like, it was, and it's not this. It hasn't happened once. It's happened a lot. But
you know what the other thing as well was? I'm being honest. Mayo, right? You're gonna love me saying this. Mayo beating Dublin in 2021 saved the game. Because
probably did, yeah. And I hate Mayo.
I definitely don't hate Mayo. I actually really like Mayo. But Mayo definitely, like, they're so entertaining. I really, really, and the clashes with Dublin, like, genuinely, Lee Keegan is one of my favorite footballers of all time.
I don't hate Mayo, I should say. I just hate the whole bridesmaid, never the bride crap that goes with them. But anyway, that's different. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, but like, personally, just as a GAA fan, I really wanted Lee Keegan to win an All-Ireland. I really wanted Aidan to win an All-Ireland. I really wanted Cillian O'Connor. I was like, do you know what? Yous are good enough, and you've been good enough for long enough that you deserve one. And everyone's like, oh, Lee threw the GPS. I would have thrown the GPS. If I was losing another final over some, like, Donald Vaughan getting sent off, like, if all that was happening and that was going to cost me another All-Ireland, I would have thrown the GPS and the boot and the whole lot
Yeah,
and stormed off down the
pick up the
tunnel.
nearest chair. Would have
Yeah,
got
and
full
the
Lansdowne
reality
Road on it.
is that anyone that I've come into contact with in my personal life who's met Lee says he's the nicest bloke you could
Same
ever
as
meet. And I genuinely would love if they did win an All-Ireland. Really, really would. We've commented here from Denise. She says, interesting. I'd go Derry by 4 points. I know, controversial. Yeah, it's interesting. And like the one thing is when you look at it, Derry have yet to beat. This is just one of the things that I'm going to put down as the reason. Derry have yet to beat a top team in Croke Park.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually.
They've had 3 games against what you would call All-Ireland contenders. Kerry, they lost, but they looked great. Dublin, they got smoked. And Galway, they got smoked.
Yeah, and, it's no use looking great if you don't win a game like against Kerry. Like, it stands for nothing. History books tell you the score. It doesn't say an asterisk beside it. Derry played fantastic, but still lost the game. Like, they lost, that's it. So, that's a fair point. Like, I'm it's no secret of mine either. I'm certainly behind Dublin for this one. I think if I wasn't convinced before the Tyrone game, I was never more convinced by the 70th minute in that game that this is going to be a cracking All-Ireland series, because Dublin are going to be the team to beat. And yeah, I know Derry will. They, as you said, they haven't beaten a top team in Croke Park. I don't know if that, when it comes to Dublin, I don't know if that really matters. Dublin is Dublin, and everyone wants to beat them, and everyone will up their game to try and beat them. So they'll give it a good rattle. I don't think, Denise is going by 4 for Derry. I think it'll be Dublin, and I think it'll be that stereotypical Dublin performance where it'll be maybe close up until the last 8-9, and Dublin could win by 10-12. Who knows? Like, they could, because
I
they are
definitely
that
agree
kind
with that.
no, they are. But you know yourself, they are the kind of team where if they've run you into the ground and they're just a couple of points ahead, they've no bother open it a little bit more for the last few minutes and put this fantastic loss on the scoreline. And there's no, like me teaching prior to, there's no sympathy, when you're 10-0 up in a game, we'll take off 6 or 7 players, and try and even it out a bit. They'll go for your throat, and that's what they do, and they should do it, because that's what they're capable of, and that's what they're trained to do. So Dublin could win by 2 or 3. Dublin could win by 10 or 12. I don't think Derry are going to win. As much as I do like Derry's kind of style of football, and Conor Glassman, the soundest guy they've ever met when I met him at the World Games, but I think Dublin will comfortably win it, I would say.
Yeah, it'd definitely be an interesting one. We have another comment in here from Denise. She said Mickey Hart is going to treat that as if it's Sam Maguire sitting on the Hogan stand and Jason up Mayo.
Love Mayo.
That's it. I do agree. I think Mickey Hart is going to take this game very, very seriously, because his appointment was, of course, it was controversial. He's the grandfather of Tyrone football. Like, he literally is the guy who brought them to the promised land and then did it twice more. He is inseparable from Tyrone football, and his appointment was literally the most bizarre, baffling appointment I have ever seen. I remember being like, what? Like, when I heard it first, I was like, that just doesn't make sense on any level. And then for Loud to come out and announce that he was gone was just nuts. So it legitimizes it very quickly if you win the Division 1 title. That legitimizes it very quickly. And you're here now, so you might as well go for it. Like, this whole nonsense, oh, mate, like, do me a favor, this nonsense of, like, Dublin, for example, last year, Dublin were bad for a good chunk of the year and then hit form at the right time. But all of a sudden, the way everybody's talking about it as if it's this, masterful technique that you can just time it and you can go, okay, now we're going to start winning games. You can't do that. You have to be in a mind, because imagine if Dublin had lost to Mayo, you would hear nothing about this. Like, Dublin timed it to perfection. You just hear Dublin had a bad year. So did Dublin hit form at the right time? Yes. Is it something that you can master? No, because if that team just has your number in the quarterfinal, all those games that you took off earlier, it's going to come back to bite you. So Derry, for example, they're in a league final now. You cannot predict what is going to happen in the future. Shane McGuigan could get injured. Conor Glass could get injured. Brendan Rodgers could get injured. I hope none of them do. But you don't know what the future holds. They're in this league final. There's silverware on the line. Go for it, as far as I'm concerned. And for Dublin, exactly the same thing. There would be no better way for them to erase the relegation in 2022 than to win Division 2 and then win Division 1 on their return to the top flight. There's no better way to do it. And I want to actually follow up because I remember I never fleshed out on that point about Mayo in 2021 beating Dublin. And I think that saved the game. Is Dublin, that system, they would have carried on with it because it was working. Why change it if it wasn't working? But Mayo showed up the flaws that day in the semi-final because Dublin held the ball and dominated the game for 50 minutes. And then they were 4 points ahead at the end of the 50 minutes. They had dominated the game and they were only 4 points ahead. And Mayo undid that in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It didn't work. So Dublin had to look at that and go, we had their foot on their neck for 50 minutes and they clawed it back in 5 minutes. How did that happen? Because we didn't go for it enough. So they started looking back to 2019 when they actually went for it a bit more. And they started incorporating that back into their system, back into their plans. And we've seen it this year in the league. This is as confident as I've been in Dublin since 2019. 2020. Like, genuinely, I wasn't that confident last year. Wasn't that confident the year before. This is as confident as I've been in Dublin since 2020.
The whole possession thing, like that whole possession thing of, it's working. So it's kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But it's, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But even if you're breaking the hearts of your own supporters, and everyone else around you. So, yeah, I completely agree.
If the fans win.
Yeah.
But how much do you value entertainment? Because the reality is when you look at it, like, man, Dublin Laois in 2007 in the Leinster Championship had 82,300 people at it, sell it. And the reason why is because that Dublin team were nuts. You look at that Dublin team back in the day with the Hillgate and everything when Mayo went up to Dublin's end and in front of the hill, and Dublin came out and went down the same end and walked right through them and did that to the hill and all. Like, if that had happened under Jim Gavin, Dublin would have come out and gone the other end. Mark my words, Dublin would not have gone down to the Hill 16 end. They would have been like, okay, nice, we're going up here. And we'll see you when the game starts. Because the tactic, if you think that Dublin are attached to the Hill 16 like they used to be, no, they're not. Because a stat that came out, I don't know if you know this, under Jim Gavin, every time Dublin won the toss, they elected to go into the Hill in the first half.
Didn't know that.
So they just were void of emotion, void of this feeling like we need to kick into the Hill in the second half. They went against that. They went with this ideology of we don't care what goal we're kicking into. This is how we play. And think about it. All of the key moments for Dublin under Jim Gavin, they're mostly down into the Gavin stand goal.
Yeah.
Dean Rock's free. 2019, Dean Rock free. 2018, Mannion penalty. But they're mostly down. Mostly down into that goal.
And McMenamin, and other than that, though, the majority of them are the other end,
Yeah. So it's really, really interesting to watch just the mentality of it. And Cluxton as well is another one that definitely would buy into that. Buy into this idea that no matter what the situation is, we play our game as if nobody's watching. So yeah, Derry on the other hand, we'll do a quick bit on them. Brilliant as far as I'm concerned. Like, Mickey Hart has come in. It's like one of those things that I remember chatting about it, and I genuinely had this idea that it will either be a match made incredibly, it will either be a match made in heaven, or I think it's going to implode. I think like the reality is what Derry I think are trying to do now is I think Derry are trying to cash in. I think they have the idea that this team is good enough to win an All-Ireland, and they are. There's no question about it. This Derry team is good enough to win an All-Ireland. So they're thinking, who is the best man to get us over a line to win an All-Ireland title that's available? Mickey Hart can do it. So let's get him in. They're not bringing in Mickey Hart for a 5-year project where he's going to rebuild the team. They're getting him in now because they want to win the All-Ireland in the next 2 years. No
That's
doubt.
fair, yeah.
So this is going to be really interesting. So you wanted to see results immediately, and they gave them. The victory against Kerry, the bounce back win away to Mayo after they lost to Dublin was very impressive as well. They've had really, really impressive wins. They absolutely ate Tyrone and Monaghan for breakfast in those games as well. They've had some games where they've been really, really good.
Yeah, the Monaghan one, I remember not seeing any of it live, but I remember managing to get a hold of kind of decent highlights online somewhere. And it was the ruthlessness more than anything against Monaghan, I think, that kind of stood out. And you mentioned it there a few minutes ago, like when we were chatting not long after the Mickey Hart appointment, like I know I said it already, but I, bit like you, I kind of gone, they're either going to be still this interesting team or they're going to go to this, 15 behind the ball rubbish and it'll drive us all mental and they'll get nowhere. And in a great way for football, it's gone, the first way. And the Monaghan game, they were ruthless. Now, Monaghan were, ropey at times. At the best of times, they were ropey. But a bit like Dublin, they put their foot on Monaghan's throat when they needed to. And, even though they were comfortably the whole way through it, there was no let up. And it is kind of like what you said, Mickey Hart is there to do one job in a very short space of time. And he needs to get the mentality of the Dublin mentality, basically, of winning well. When you're losing, fight back. Always believe that you're going to win the game somehow. And that's what will get you towards an All-Ireland. It may not win it straight away, but it'll certainly get towards it. And they are flying. And it is the two best teams in the country who are in the Division 1 final. And it's mental that it was the Division 2 final last year. It's mental to see where these two teams are now. Like, I'd love to know if it's ever happened before. I'd say you're right. I don't think it's ever happened before.
I'd be surprised.
I'd be stunned. Yeah, I'd be stunned if it's happened before. But it's the final that I think it's fair to say it's the final everybody wants. It's the final the GA wants in terms of hype and entertainment and everything as well, because you're not just getting Dublin and Derry, you're getting Desi Farrell, you're getting Mickey Hart, you're getting Con, you're getting Collie Pascal, who's absolutely flying. You're getting the Conor Glass Player of the Year, basically, at the different levels, and you've so many good things going for you in this game that it's just made for box office. So, but I still think Dublin are going to come out the right end of it, I would say.
Yeah, like I do think so. We will come back to predictions and then say why. Derry, on top of that, the one thing I didn't add in is they've also done this. A lot of the things that were aimed at them was, well, you only have one set of 15 players. And when it came time to, bring people off the bench against Kerry did have the stronger bench to do that. They brought in Stephen O'Brien, players like that changed the game. Derry didn't have players like that to fall back on. This year, Dermot Baker's been a great find in defence. He's really slotted in like, he belongs there. Cormac Murphy in the forwards as well has been brilliant. Lachlan Murray has continued developing as well. Like, they definitely have added to the squad over this league campaign as well. And Emma Bradley coming back in, I thought, against Dublin was really, really good as well. Like, they've strengthened. There's no question about it. They've strengthened. So I do think that this game will be really, really interesting. So official prediction time, Derry versus Dublin. I am going Dublin. And the reason why is I just think the way Dublin's attack is right now with Con, with Pascal, with Mannion coming back in, Costello now back in, I think we're just moving too well. And in Croke Park, the big open space, I think Derry will find it hard to stifle all of Dublin's threats. You see, the key difference is with Dublin is Dublin don't have the obvious one that you have to stop. Like, you've got other teams like, for example, Kerry with David Clifford. He's the obvious one you have to stop. Galway, Shane Walsh is the obvious one you have to stop. Like, other teams have players that you can pinpoint. Armagh with Reno O'Neill, another one, Donegal with McBrearty, that you point to him and you're like, we need to stop him. Dublin, it's like, you've got Con, Mannion, Pascal, Costello, Kieran Kilkenny, Sean Bugler, that are all serious threats. And that's why if you look at Dublin's games last year, it was never one guy kicking 7 points, 8 points. It was Costello with 3, Con O'Callaghan with 2, Mannion with 2,
Yeah.
and just rack it up. And I think Derry will find it hard to stop all those players from chipping in. Dublin, they know they have to stop Shane McGuigan. That's what it is on the other side. They know we are going for him. Like, he is not getting the space that he got last time, because against Dublin last time, he kicked some sensational points. McGuigan is definitely the one to watch, but I think Dublin will be able to quell him just enough. I don't think it's going to be a whitewash like it was last year. I think it's going to be very close, as a matter of fact, but I think Dublin will win by 2 points if I had to give an official prediction on who I think takes it. What about you?
Yeah, you're spot on. I was thinking of a thing I read years ago about, I don't know, an article about soccer, and I remember it said the opposition they're not trying to stop. Normally you would try and stop the ringleader, but in this case they have to stop the entire circus. And it's a bit like that Shane McGuigan, Shane Walsh, etc. They're the ringleaders, or the ringmaster, whatever it's called. But with Dublin, you are literally trying to stop the entire circus, because you have no idea which of them is actually running the show. Basically, they're all running it in equal measure. So, and that goes from goalkeeper to number 30, whatever, on the bench. So I would say Dublin as well. I do like the idea of sticking by the absolute stupidity that I said earlier on of Dublin winning by a bigger score, because like Tyrone.
But it did happen. It did happen in last year's league final. It did happen in the Division 2 final, and I was very surprised at how easy Dublin won that game, because I wasn't anywhere near as impressed with them in last year's league campaign as I was with them this time around. And I do agree with you on having to stop the whole circus versus stopping the ringleader. Like, Shane McGuigan is the obvious threat for Derry, whereas with Dublin, 1 week Con O'Callaghan scores 3-4 against Kerry, then Colin Baskell hits 2-3 against Tyrone. He leads the way. Costello has had days where he leads the way. Mannion has had days where he leads the way. It's almost like you don't know where the main threat is coming from. You're not 100% sure.
Yeah, you don't know. And like, you know, Derry could stifle stifle Collie Baskell and the likes, and, you know, Lee Gannon could come up from half back and kick 5 points. You know, like, you can't legislate for anyone on the Dublin team not stepping up and just going, okay, I've spotted that, you know, Con has been double marked, but if I get the ball in midfield or whatever, I can burst through that extra space. I'll chip away for a while. I'll kick 4 or 5, and then you're looking at a whole different thing. That's the whole ringleader versus the circus kind of thing. So I'm going to go Dublin, and just for something different, I suppose, I'm going to go that they might win by like 8 plus. Possibly.
Well, you heard it here.
If
that ends up happening, feel free to clip this up and put it out everywhere. Let everybody know you were right. So Sinead McCordia, we have predicted all 4 of the Allianz Football League Finals for this weekend. Tune into all of them, and put it in the comments below who you think is going to win, why, everything like that. I've really, really enjoyed this episode, Jason. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to anyone who watched. Thank you especially to those that got involved in the discussion and got involved with the comments and the questions. I really, really appreciate that. Anyway, guys, Sinead, until the league finals and until the next episode here on An Cluiche, Torara.